In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to sew by hand using a running stitch. Now, a running stitch can either be a big stitch or a little stitch. A big stitch you would only want to use if you just wanted to hold the two together temporarily, and then you would be sewing it down on the machine. You want to sew with a small stitch if you want it to be held down permanently. So we are going to take and sew this rectangle to this square. You're not sewing to two pieces right now, all right? So what I want to do is take this rectangle and pin it down so I don't have to worry about holding it together when I'm sewing. All right, now I have my thread already prepared, and I would be sewing with orange thread, but I'm sewing with red thread just to let you see the thread a little bit easier on the orange. And I do have about 2 to 3 feet of thread and double strand and a knot tied in the end of it. So what I want to do is start from the underneath. This is the good side. I want to start from the underneath and bring it up close to the corner right here. Okay, and pull all my thread through. All right, now that hides my knot on the underside. Then, as I said, I want tiny stitches, so I'm going to go down to the bottom. And my thread got a little knot in it, so I want to make sure I get that out of there. All right, I'm down to the bottom. Now, I want to leave a little bit of space, and I want to come up to the top. Then I want to go down to the bottom. Make sure you pull your threads evenly. Then I want to leave a little bit of space. And I want to come up to the top. Now I want to leave about, probably that's about 1/8 of an inch, and go down to the bottom. Again, make sure your threads are pulled evenly. You don't pull them too tight, that your fabric gathers up, and you want nice tiny stitches. And then you want to leave the same amount of space between each stitch. Now, you want your stitches to be straight and uniform. So, what does uniform mean? Well, do you ever see people wearing uniforms when they work? That means they're all dressed the same. So uniform means looking all the same. And it does take practice getting your stitches all the same and all nice and neat. It's an art for people doing hand sewing work. Now you would do this the whole way around your rectangle. So if you've already sewn on the machine, you know the difference between machine sewing and hand sewing takes longer, all right? But for some people, it is very relaxing and they do like to hand sew. Now, I'm just going to go to the end of this side and then I'm going to show you how to make an ending knot or a lock stitch, which that is what an ending knot is called, a lock stitch. If you don't make a knot at the beginning and the end of sewing, just like we talked about in machine sewing, then all this work that you did is just going to come out and you would have to start all over again. All right, now you want to end on the underneath side where your beginning knot was located, but at the other end. All right, so I'm going to turn it over on this side. All right, now to make a lock stitch, right at where you ended, you just want to grab with your needle. Get with your needle just a little bit of the fabric. Take your needle, pull it through and most of your thread. You have a loop in your thread, and make sure your loop is fairly small. Take your needle, go through that loop, pull it tight. Do that exact same thing 2 more times. Get a little bit of that fabric, pull your needle through, most of your thread, go through the loop in the thread, pull it tight, cut your thread off. And that's your running stitch. Now, you also want to do a lock stitch if your thread gets too small. So if you have about 4 or 5 inches left of thread, you want to stop and do a lock stitch, because if you get down to 2 inches of thread, you're not going to be able to get your needle through to do a lock stitch. So you do want to end and do a lock stitch when you get down to about 4 to 5 inches of thread. And that is hand sewing a running stitch.